One of my videos went very mildly viral. It was simply a tour of me walking through my Xeric native rock garden, talking about the plants that I liked. When I say native, I mean native to Colorado, where I live. But this would apply to anywhere in the western United States. Had I known that people would like it so much, I would have been more exhaustive and to the point. In this video, I take a cool publication from the Colorado State University Extension and review some of the plants that I've had in my garden, both successful and unsuccessful. I put a link in the description to that publication. Obviously, I can't review every plant in a single video, so maybe I'll do more videos in the future. So what constitutes a successful Xeric perennial, in my opinion? First and most obviously, it should require a little water. It should choke out weeds and keep aggressive competitors at bay. It should have long-lasting flowers. It should volunteer readily, yet not be invasive. Lastly, it should grow anywhere, from full sun to partial shade. As a disclaimer, I don't review any native grasses in this video, so maybe next time. Leadplant is one of the few shrub-like native plants that thrives in a xeric garden. I've planted it on multiple occasions and it's awesome. It forms an impenetrable bush and doesn't require irrigation, none whatsoever. My only knock is that its blooming cycle is really short, like only a week. I've planted chocolate flower on several occasions and it just doesn't do well in my garden. It gets outcompeted by other plants, specifically Gallardia, and seems to require more water than I was willing to give it. Prairie Sage will happily grow in your garden without any supplemental water. Now I find it kind of invasive, so unless you're trying to fill a lot of empty space and willing to pull out unwanted volunteers, I might find another choice. Also, it doesn't really bloom. I planted purple prairie clover once and never saw the plant again after a year or two. It's beautiful and delicate, but it either got outcompeted by an aggressive species or needed more water. Yarrow is a great plant for the xeric garden. It grows with little to no water, forms dense clumps that choke weeds, and readily volunteers. It tends to be a little bit invasive, but the plants are easy to pull out. Spreading daisy or fleabane is one of my favorite xeric rock garden plants. It's not a large plant, it stays very close to the ground, but it forms dense clumps that spread over time and choke out all weeds and competitors. The plant's an early bloomer, April and May, so it complements most other flowering perennials which flower in the summer months. Blue Flax is a standby of the native xeric garden. The plant produces single stalks with beautiful blue flowers. It flowers twice, both in late spring and late summer. Blue flax produces copious amounts of huge seeds and readily volunteers. But be warned, weeds and competitors can easily grow up around it. I think blue flax is best for a meadow project, where you can sow the seeds far and wide and let the plant pop up here and there where it wants to. Evening Primrose is a favorite of mine. It comes in white and yellow varieties. It spreads to form a mat of vegetation and is pretty good at suppressing weeds, though I do have to pick spiky dandelions out of the middle. It'll volunteer from time to time and transplants very well. One downside is that the flowers attract Japanese beetles, which eat the flowers in the process of pollinating. Personally, I don't spray pesticide, but sometimes I pick off the beetles and throw them in a bucket of water to keep them from eating all the flowers. Penstemon are one of the quintessential native flowering perennials. I've had mixed success. In the front yard rock garden, which was fully exposed to the sun without supplemental water, they did not do very well and were smothered by competitors. In a backyard rock garden, which was carved into the side of a steep slope under a pine tree, multiple varieties of Penstemon thrived and aggressively volunteered. So the backyard location only receives a few hours of intense sunlight per day and gets more water. So I think Penstemons do better in alpine environments rather than desert or prairie environments. I planted Goldenrod in a 2018 garden extension, and it does well in a sunny, low-water garden. However, it's a standalone plant, which doesn't seem to volunteer readily. It will happily sit where you put it, but don't expect it to cover your garden in a few years. Globemallow is a cool plant, and it thrives in a prairie or a desert garden without supplemental water. As I remember, it has multiple blooms throughout the summer. It volunteers fairly readily, but the plant is a little bit spindly and doesn't get huge, so don't expect it to blanket your garden or choke out the weeds and competitors. Some of my Globemallow has been choked out by aggressive perennials like Gallardia. Rabbit brush is a large bush-like plant. The normal variety can get very tall. There's a dwarf variety which supposedly stays less than 2 feet tall. I planted some rabbit brush in 2017 and ignored it. It didn't die, but it took a few years to thrive, which surprised me. I like to put rabbit brush near native large grasses, where it kind of, if you want to grow some fairly tall things, it needs to be in an area that doesn't have a lot of tiny little plants. It's a big plant. It blooms in the late summer, which is nice. There are many varieties of Liatris, which are very similar, as well as many common names. These are just awesome plants. They produce very tall single stalks and huge, long-lasting late summer flowers. I planted 2 or 3 Liatris plants in 2013, and by 2020, I probably had 100 plants throughout my garden, so it volunteers like crazy. It's not going to blanket your garden, but it will send multiple tall stalks above the other competitors, which I really like. A huge benefit of Liatris is that it attracts monarch butterflies like crazy. My wife took this picture. We literally have hundreds of monarchs visit our garden in August. Wonderful. Wine cups may be the easiest plant of all to grow. They will thrive anywhere without any supplemental water. They spread into a dense clump that chokes out all weeds and competitors. They produce beautiful flowers that last all summer long. So the Colorado State Extension document has a photo gallery of some various gardens. I highlighted some plants that were good in my garden. I'm not going to go over them in detail, so please just hit stop on the video if you need to write them down. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I love discussing plants and native gardening, so please post a message in the comments. Just getting a few messages from you guys makes it all worth it. This won't go viral, but it's just fun to have conversations with people who are plant nerds like me. So maybe you'd like to see me review another plant, or maybe you don't agree with my conclusions. So either way, just leave a comment, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.